couple videos back, I was discussing how I was thinking about getting into film photography. This is a film single lens reflex or SLR camera. It is the Nikon FM10, and it's a really simple camera to use if you understand what they call the exposure triangle. We've got our shutter speed here, our film speed here. The higher the film speed, the better you can do in low light conditions. The faster your shutter speed, for instance, 1/125th of a second is faster than 1/60th, you can freeze the action. The slower your shutter speed, you can blur the action. And then you've got your aperture on the lens. In a nutshell, what that does is the higher the number, so if we're all the way at f11, let's say, a lot of things will be in focus. You turn it all the way up to open it up all the way to 1.8, then only the main subject will be in focus and your background will be blurred. And then you've got your focusing here on this ring. But you've only got these things. You've got your shutter speed, you've got your ISO, which on older cameras like this one is known as ASA, which has since been revamped to ISO. It's the same thing. They just changed the name throughout the existence. And then you've got your aperture. These three things make up the exposure triangle, which helps to determine your photograph. But I was thinking about how this control format is something of a dying breed. It is being revived, thankfully, in this particular camera here, the Fuji X Pro 1. There's also the X100 and the X100S. Same concept. But I was thinking about how things have changed, because I remember when I was back in elementary school, I was up in my summer place, and a relative or somebody that I remember seeing on a retreat had one of these film SLRs, and I looked through the viewfinder, and I remember being amazed at, because I was only using film point and shoots at the time, and that had the straight through viewfinders that didn't exactly line up with the lens. But so I was surprised at how you could look through one side, and I was wondering where that image came from. I was actually thinking about various things to say before I started this video, and that comment just came up. That memory just came up out of nowhere. But no. So I'm glad to see the analog control layout coming back. But I was thinking about how cameras have changed over the years and how technology has changed in general. These days, you can take your picture on your smartphone. Most people do. I've actually taken a lot of pictures with my iPhone before I got the D70. So what did camera makers have to do to stand out? Well, one of the things that they can do is to create cameras like this. Cameras that have a 22 times optical zoom. This is the camera's top. You can see how big that zoom lens, how far that zoom lens extends. You've got things like onboard Wi-Fi and GPS for instant sharing of your images. You've got various effects and scene modes. You've got the ability to zoom. Now, just the ability to zoom oftentimes puts a point and shoot above a cell phone, also because of image quality. A lot of times point and shoot has better image quality. But again, because people are shooting so many photos with their cell phones, the camera companies have to be unique, have to think of unique ways to keep up. So you've got the super zoom, and you've got, you'll notice the rather minimalist control layout compared to one of these film SLRs that I showed you. And that's because the way things have gone, most budget cameras, the FM10 is around $300. The S9500 by Nikon is also $300. But these days, a $300 camera is a point and shoot. Now, I'm not saying point and shoots are bad. I'm just saying that that's basically what technology has allowed it to become. Is a point and shoot that basically controls the exposure triangle for you, and you just what they call point and shoot, hence the name. But what other features are camera makers doing to differentiate themselves? You've got waterproof cameras. And just think, because the FM10 came out in 1995, I looked that up, it's now 2013. You've got cameras, like I said, with a huge zoom that was unthought of back in those days. You've got underwater cameras like I just showed you. This camera is really unique. It's got the very wide zoom lens, and it's also got something else. It's got a really nice long zoom. It's got full manual control over the exposure triangle, your shutter speed, your aperture, your ISO. That I'm assuming that one right there is for exposure compensation. But yeah, so you've got full exposure control on this camera, which for a point and shoot, unless you get into the what they call enthusiast level point and shoot, most point and shoots around the price range of the FM10, the $300 price range, don't have this control, so I'm very happy to see it. But what's unique about this camera is the fact that it's more than just a camera. It is an Android tablet. This thing runs Android 4.1 Jelly Bean, and it's a camera. And just think about this for a second. Again, we've got our basic film SLR that has complete manual controls from back in the 90s, 80s, 70s. You fast forward 15, 20 years, we've got cameras that can go online to Netflix. You've got cameras where you can go on Skype. You've got, let's see, what else is unique about this? Internet browsing on a camera. I mean, it's just like, wow. And this is in addition to things like the mega zoom and the, I'm sorry, wrong image. The mega zoom and the, where is that? There it is. I'm sorry, I'm using my magnifier to get around here. The mega zoom and the waterproofing. But, and I'm showing you cameras here as an example, but let's think about technology in general and how far we've come. That's why I basically titled this video, How Things Have Changed. In nearly 20 years, things have changed so much. And I'm curious about what your input is. Where do you think we'll be in the next 20 years? Not just with cameras, but with automation and with technology in general. The cameras, one of the big points here is a lot of the $300 cameras, the ones that will fall in line with that FM10 there, completely, for lack of a better word, I would say completely automated, computer controlled. Do you think that automation is only going to continue? For those of you who remember, for those of you who watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, if you remember the episode where they discovered the Iconian homeworld, and the probe had entered the Enterprise's computer, and LaForge had made that comment that the computer on the Enterprise was 90% automatic, and most of what they do is out of their control. It's like these point-and-shoot cameras. You can't have direct control over the exposure triangle. You can adjust some settings, but you can't be as in-depth as you can on one of these SLRs. But that's sort of the compromise I guess a lot of people felt they would have to make if they wanted, and also people that just want to point and shoot and not worry about the settings and let the computer take over. But having super zoom and the underwater capability you know, and in turn they let everything in the camera essentially be controlled by the onboard computer. That's very close to what LaForge was saying in that episode of Star Trek, that this camera has a computer where the bulk of the material the bulk of the stuff that happens is completely automatic. And that's where I leave you with this question: do you think that it's going to continue that way? Do you think we're going to get some things back? Keep in mind what I said earlier, by the way, about the about this camera here, the Fuji, where the analog control of the older film cameras is coming back. So where do you think we're heading? Are we going to be heading towards more automation, less automation? Are we going to be coming to a point where we're going to voice our commands to everything, and it's going to be like, you know, um, like this camera here, the Galaxy camera? You can do voice commands with this. Is that where we're? Do you think that's where we're going to continue to go? Where do you think we'll be in 20 years? Thank you for watching. Comments are welcome, and have a nice day.